Welcome to the 81st episode of the GameFor Podcast. In this episode, we'll talk about when tabletop gaming is too much work. I'm Adam.
I'm Matt.
And this is the GameFor Podcast. GameFor is a platform to help connect tabletop gamers and to help you get more out of your tabletop gaming. Matt and I are part of a software development and design company called MilkCan. And because most of the folks at MilkCan love tabletop games, we developed the GameFor app and launched it in early 2018. We launched this companion podcast in June 2019 to help tabletop gamers get more enjoyment out of their hobby. Due to the COVID-19 global pandemic, we hibernated the GameFor app in July of 2020 and plan to bring back a retooled version of the app for Android, iOS, and web when gaming in person is safer. Until then, we'll keep bringing you this podcast to help you get more out of your tabletop gaming. So speaking about tabletop gaming, have you gotten to do anything since our last episode? I know last episode you'd been kind of in a dry spell.
Yes, no, the dry spell is continuing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, work is. I keep saying. I feel like I keep saying this. Is quieting down a little bit. So should be wrapping up a big project at the end of this week. So yeah, hopefully, and we've got our last baseball tournament this weekend. So yeah, I'll get like a month or so of non craziness maybe before hockey and all that stuff starts up again.
Right, yeah. So the sports will be just about done before the sports start up again.
You're right, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Like, what kind of things do you see yourself working on? Do you like?
So I still need to
Are you guys?
finish.
Do you have some game nights planned or anything like that?
I don't. I need to. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Even like your spouse is like, "Hey, you haven't gamed in a while." You're like, "Yeah, I haven't."
Yeah.
So yeah, no. I know there's some board games with a few friends are wanting to get tested out, and then I got the
Mm-hmm.
expansion for Dark Tower. I want to try out. Yeah, heard that the Spelljammer stuff is starting to ship in September, so I'm hoping my stuff comes pretty close to that. And then my oldest is actually, I guess, started getting into RPG podcasts. So I don't know.
Hmm.
I'm going to talk to him. Maybe he will join us in our next campaign. So
Like like live play kind of podcasts or
yeah,
podcasts
yeah.
about.
There
Oh,
was like
okay.
somebody that he follows or listens to started doing like a campaign, and he got really into that, and then started listening to a couple others. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, so he might have the itch, which I will be glad to help him out with.
I mean, that's the thing is that the live play stuff. I know that there are some people out there who are maybe old school grognards to some degree in role playing,
Mhm.
who kind of poo poo the whole thing. But I do honestly believe that it brings people into the hobby that weren't necessarily otherwise going to get brought in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and I think it
Um,
breaks down some of the barriers, and I think it gives you some options to like understand and see how it's being done. Like watching
mhm.
Critical Role. I mean, you don't have to be a Matt Mercer to do stuff, but it also gets you to go, "Oh, that's what it could be." It's not
Sure.
so
And admittedly, most likely you and your group are not a bunch of improv actors in LA or whatever,
with voice
who are
talent. Yeah,
right, exactly. But you still, yeah, you and your friends, I think to some degree, things like that, those kinds of live play things, if anything, they're breaking down a bit of a stigma. Like there's always been a bit of to some degree, there's been some stigma to like role playing games. I mean, look at like not to give any spoilers here, but to look at the most recent
Stranger Things.
season of Stranger Things.
Right.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, the
You
cult.
know,
The cult.
right, exactly. They brought in a lot of that kind of like satanic panic stuff from the '80s in there,
Yeah.
which was I think a smart move.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
so, yeah, so like, nowadays it's like it's seen as like something that even maybe the cool kids can do,
Hmm.
potentially. And so that I think just helps overall. It's a trickle down or something. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that your sons get interested at least in listening to that kind of stuff. I mean,
Right.
it's fun to listen to, and if it gets you and your friends to start doing it, maybe not the I think the issue comes sometimes when the people who listen to a bunch of like let's say Critical Role decide that they and their friends are going to start their own type of Critical Role and their own kind of like live play podcast. You and your friends may not be necessarily as talented and funny as those people, on
Right.
those shows. But to you in the group, it's still a lot of fun. The
Hmm.
difference is we're having a lot of fun. Are we actually interesting to other people, or are we just interesting to ourselves? And I think that in
Right.
most situations, you're mainly just interesting in yourselves, but you're still having a good time.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. Especially because if you get into in jokes and stuff like that, that people are like,
exactly.
"Oh, I don't know you guys," so that doesn't make
Mhm.
the reference you made about something somebody did at lunch last week. It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Right, exactly. So, it's uh, play RPGs. Don't necessarily start a live play podcast until
Mm.
you go to improv school or something. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly, but
Right.
that's my personal take on the matter there. But I'm glad, like I said, that it's bringing folks into the fold, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. But
Yeah.
so gaming on the horizon, but nothing yet.
Hmm,
But
hmm.
yeah, so. But how about you? I'm sure you've been busy.
Yeah. Oh, I've been busy. So let's see. I'm working on a 3D printed Fishman on Twitch that I'm just about done with. He was sent to me by a friend. It's a 3D STL from a company called Artisans Guild. And it's a really nice print. And I've been really enjoying the figure. And I've been kind of spending a little bit more time on it than I normally would with a tabletop gaming piece. But I have a tendency to do that on Twitch sometimes. I don't necessarily like speed paint as much on Twitch. I have a
Hmm.
tendency to slow down a little bit. I mean, I'm still not doing display quality stuff, I don't think, but I'm doing that. Um, so he's nearing completion, and since he's nearing completion, and I wasn't completely sure what to do next, I have started working on. I primed up this week on Saturday some models. um, I got these four kind of crazy, weird hand sculpted models from a company over in England called Mammoth Miniatures.
Okay.
They're the guy. Well, I was going to say they're the guys, but they're the guy. It's mainly Nick Evans, and he made this game called Planet 28 that I like a lot. He made a fantasy version called Brutal Quest and stuff like that. And he also he's a real Renaissance guy in that he writes his own books, lays them out, does the artwork, also sculpts a lot of the models himself, but like by hand, like with putty and all that stuff, and not using a
Wow. Yeah,
computer.
yeah.
And then he even now has a little like old timey kind of plastic injection molding machine that looks like it's from the 50s, maybe. I don't even know.
Oh,
He posted a
okay.
picture of it once. Yeah, like it's not like, I don't know how the molds are made because I know they're not metal, but it looks like it could be a plastic injection molding machine or some sort of industrial butter churn. It's a weird looking little device. It's like a desktop type thing, and but he can use it to make plastic models. And so I bought some of those from him, and then they've been sitting around since last year. And then I finally have based them, and now they are black and white zenithal. And I'll probably start working on them on Twitch. But I also worked on or not Zenithal Prime, not black and white, but I did like a Zenithal highlight kind of base coat with a Adeptus Mechanicus model. I think he's a Tech Priest Dominus, I think is the technical term for him, the actual product name.
Okay.
And he's just like a cool, like weird sort of robot-y guy with almost like robot skeleton feet coming out underneath his robe, and he's got like
Oh, neat.
28 arms, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not going to use him for 40K, so I kind of modified him. He had like this sort of like staff that's got like an axe head on the top, and I'm like, nah. So I got rid of the axe head and put this cool demon skull on there that I got from the Citadel box of skulls, and I did some other little tweaks. Nothing. I didn't kit bash him much, just some.
Okay.
And then I primed in black, and then did some kind of zenithal highlight base primes with a couple different shades of brown from Army Painter's new airbrush line.
Mm,
So his cloak is, instead of looking red, which is what you generally do Adeptus Mechanicus in, he's going to be like kind of brown and spooky, kind of. I'm going to definitely grunge him up real hard, and then I'll be able to use him like as a bad guy in Space Weirdos, Stargrave, Planet 28, as I mentioned, like all kinds of different games. He'll just be a cool sci-fi, weird, half robot, half person wizard thing or whatever. But I'm going
nice.
to work on him on Twitch as well. What else did I do? Oh, I also that skeleton assassin guy that I did.
Mhm.
I varnished him, gave him a good matte varnish. So I did all three of those things on Saturday morning. It took me maybe about an hour, and
Nice.
then
That's
after
not bad.
that, I went back to nonstop layout mode for the new game. That's mostly what I did. Anytime I'm not either streaming or working or sleeping or eating or whatever, I'm generally working on layout. And yeah, we're hoping it should hopefully launch mid August.
Okay.
We've got like, as of this recording, we have one more internal piece of artwork that we're waiting on, and then the cover, and then
Okay.
I think that should be it. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'm just going to check my phone to make sure that I didn't just get emailed. No, I did not. Okay, so yeah, one more internal piece of artwork, and then the cover.
Nice.
The artwork is, God, it's so good. I mean, it's taken a long time, but it is so good. I think people are going to be really blown away. I've been blown away so far, and I'm critical. So yeah, really looking forward to getting it into people's hands. But it'll be post Gen Con. We were hoping to launch it for Gen Con, but it'll be a little post Gen Con, which will be fine.
Yeah, I can't believe Gen Con's
Um,
basically here.
I know it's like 20 days away or something like that. I just
Hmm.
saw a post. There's I'm a member of the Fans of Gen Con Facebook group, and I was scrolling through this morning real quick on Facebook, and someone's got like a light up LED sign that they just leave every year that just has the Gen Con logo on it. It's like a
Okay.
little desktop sign. It's
Yeah.
not huge. It's just like sits on their desktop, some sort of probably, I don't know, Arduino project or something. And then it says the number of days left. And so they post pictures of it every couple of days or whatever, especially towards, as we get closer on that Facebook
Yeah.
group. And yeah, I think it said 20 or 21 days when I saw the one. The thing is, it's like it said 21 days, but then with Facebook, it like could be a post from 3 days ago because you never,
Right.
So I have no idea actually
Yeah.
what the real
Suddenly
number
it's
is.
30 days and you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, well, now wait a minute, did we go back in time
Right.
on Facebook? Yes, we did.
Yep.
So yeah, that's basically what I've been doing. I'm hoping to, like, once we get the layout done, I want to do move back into basement cleaning mode and also start working on some terrain and stuff like that. I've got a whole bunch of 3D printed terrain that you'd printed for me for like Stargrave and games like that,
Oh
and I
yeah.
need to get that stuff primed. It's all built now and glued together and all that kind of stuff, but I need to get it primed, and I want to prime it with filler primer, which is rattle can primer, which I don't want to do in the winter, obviously. So there's all that. I want to get that stuff done, and then also remember that giant bolt rifle that I bought
Oh yeah. Yeah.
online?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to get that all glued together and primed before fall or late fall, winter or whatever as well. Like I've got the parts all kind of like put together. I've been looking for little. I haven't done it in a couple of weeks, but I was looking for little places where like, do I need to sand this? Do I need to like whatever, that kind of thing. Like I'm not going to get fancy and start wet sanding everything and all that stuff, but for like real egregious issues that I want to be able to fix, I want to fix those before I start gluing it together. And I
Got
think
it.
honestly, it's better to glue it together, and then if I do really want to get fancy and wet sand it and stuff like that, it's better to do that once it's glued together because then you
Hmm.
got gap filling and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it's a for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, it's a I found this guy online a couple of years ago who 3D prints like 40K weapons and stuff like that, and he did the bolt rifle for me, which is the guns that the Primaris Marines. So it's bigger than a normal bolt gun. The bolt rifle, it's bigger and longer and chunkier, and it's allegedly 1-to-1 scale, though who is to say really? But it's about 3 feet long. It's a big chunky machine. So I'm looking forward to getting that all at least built and primed, and then I can paint it over the course of the winter. So
Nice.
that'll be fun.
And then you can take out all
Um,
the tyrannical imperial army
technically,
coming. Well, or you
technically
fight for
does
them.
not does not actually shoot. It's
Oh,
actually, yeah, I know, yeah. If you wanted it to actually shoot like bolt rounds, it's way more expensive than what I paid. So yeah, it's a bummer though. But it looks cool though. It's got a skull on it because it's, why wouldn't it? So sometimes, not
okay.
always, but sometimes your tabletop gaming can feel like work, can't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes work feels like work, and that's
Sometimes
the
work.
issue. Is
Yeah.
that,
Right.
yeah, when you have too much work and then you don't have any tabletop. But even if you've got time for tabletop gaming, there's times when you're like, oh, I got to build that big giant bolt gun and then glue it all together and then sand it and all that kind of stuff. And there's times when you're like, this is a lot of fun. This is the hobby part that I
Right.
enjoy. And
Right.
then there's other people that are like, no, I just wanted to have a cool bolt gun. I didn't want to have to build it and all that kind of stuff. Well,
Hmm.
but yeah, sometimes the hobby parts, depending on the game that you're playing, the type of game or whatever, and the fun parts are not as accessible, right?
Right. Yeah. Like
And then
I just want to play Blood Bowl, but man,
right,
I got to get an army figured out first, and
You team together and all that stuff. Yep.
yeah, train and
And to some people that's a bummer. Like the reason that I think specifically in wargaming, I think the reason that some people don't want to get into wargaming, they look at the wargaming and they're like, that looks like a lot of fun to play and I would really dig it, but I don't want to build and paint, or I don't want to. And there's other people that are like, I would really love to get into role playing games and stuff like that, but it's a bunch of work to do this, that, and the other thing, and all that kind of stuff.
right.
And that's
That's why
that.
people are like, I'm just going to play a board game, and then they open it up and realize that they've got 40 sheets of cardboard they've got to punch out, and
Right, exactly. When I got my when I finally got my Kickstarter for Ogre 6th edition from Steve Jackson Games. So this is back in the early 2010s. I finally get this Kickstarter, and it is this massive 27-pound box of board game, basically. And Ogre, for those of you who don't know, used to come in a little tiny, like, I think it initially came in a Ziploc bag. And it was a very small game that you played like on an 11 by 17 that was like folded into quarters, and it had little hexes on it, and you moved little cardboard, chits around and stuff like that. And then 6th edition, it's still all basically cardboard. It's just like slotted together cardboard to make like 3-dimensional like vehicles and like guard towers and like
yeah,
tanks and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And it's just real super thick chipboard and all that kind of stuff. And when you first open up the box, there was like a cardboard thing on the top that was like it basically said, first thing that you should not do is punch out all of these pieces, like all of them.
oh,
That way leads to madness. And so the first thing I did is I punched out all of the pieces. But
oh no.
yeah, no, I did. I just fine. I was
Well,
fine with it.
yeah, I've been there.
I was warned.
My OCD kind of kicks in, and I was just like, well,
Mm-hmm.
no, I need to get everything done, like pulled out, and ready to go.
Yeah. So, board games can be just as difficult because of things like that. Not all of them. Some of them are very simple, but so, basically our thought is this for this episode was like, we're going to kind of go through and talk about some of the things that people talk about as far as like, oh, this is too much work for this particular type of, game of the 4 different genres. And then kind of try to give you some suggestions and some ideas and things.
Fix all your problems. And you're going to be
I
like,
don't know if we're going to fix all your
Matt
problems.
and Adam are amazing. They fixed all my problems, and now gaming is fun again.
That's
and they'll
exactly
lift us up on their shoulders and
hooray. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So board games, we were just talking about board games. So board games, if you've only got a few, it's fine. But how many people only have a few? I mean, that are, serious about
they breed like rabbits.
Yeah, they do. Whether it's Kickstarters, whether it's just like special deals, whether it's just you went into the game shop and they finally saw this game that you hadn't seen before, or that you haven't been able to find it anywhere and now you do, or whatever.
Or you like a really good game and then you find out they made 15 expansions for it that you have to get now because they might run out.
Right. And so what do you do with them? I mean, there are like, because I know that like we don't have a ton of board games in our house, but we have some. But they're certainly not all in the same place because of who my wife and I are. We're just not super crazy organized. But if you wanted to get organized and not just have like some board games in the upstairs closet and some board games underneath the bed downstairs and some in that weird room in the basement and some over in the, like, well, I don't know why this one's in the kitchen, that kind of stuff. Like the biggest thing to do, honestly, is to start looking for like shelving. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
There's tons of solutions out there from like Walmart to like IKEA, not like
Costco,
not like IKEA's the top, but yeah, exactly. If you get really into board gaming and then you decide you want to get into content creation, it is, I think, a law, possibly an actual, maybe it's just a mandate, but I think it might be a law that you have to do your YouTube video or whatever in front of your wall of board games behind you. That's just basically the way that it seems to have to work.
I wonder if like there's anybody that has like the like the fake books, if there's like the fake wall of games, and it's really just a facade. Because
that sounds like a Kickstarter. Honestly, that sounds like you've just come up with your next Kickstarter.
Yes,
yeah,
sweet.
Exactly.
Yes,
because you could just sell like a thing that you just set on those shelves that looks like it's 28 different games, or whatever, but it's actually just it's empty. Be cheaper, wouldn't it?
Right. Well,
Maybe.
and then you can maybe put it. Maybe there's a wall safe, behind it too. That's
Oh, yeah. You keep your board games in there to keep them safe.
right.
Um, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so yeah, whether it's like plastic shelves that you get from the hardware store, like those kind of like Plano kind of ones, or whether it's kind of slightly nicer stuff from, again, wherever you're going to go, Costco, Sam's Club, IKEA, whatever, Target. Having a place where they all kind of sit is not only a good idea for a couple different reasons. Number one, it's just good to have them kind of up off the floor. They
Right.
can get stepped on. Maybe like you sometimes have, like in my basement, I don't put anything on the floor that I don't want to eventually possibly get wet
Mm,
because very frequently that happens. And so I've been stung by that before. So I have now been trained after, I don't know, 10 plus years living in this house to just like, this is expensive. I'm going to set it on this thing over here and not set it on the floor, that kind of thing.
right.
And I am trying to get more organized. And one of the things I've done is put up lots of plastic shelves. You can get those plastic shelf units for like, well, back in the day, it was like $25, but I'm sure now it's more expensive because of reasons.
Right.
But they just help to keep things kind of a little bit more organized, or at the very least up off of the floor if you're thinking about basement issues.
Hmm.
Um, you know, and it also keeps it a little bit less out of sight, out of mind. If you're putting a bunch of stuff and you're keeping it in all kinds of weird places and things like that,
Yeah.
then when it's time to play a game, you're not like looking at your wall of games going, what do I want to play? You're like, what do I have even? And we'll talk a little
Yeah.
bit
There's
about
been
that
some times
too.
where I'm like, oh, didn't realize. I forgot I had this game. Yeah.
So that type of stuff, shelving solutions and whatnot. And if you have smaller games like smaller card games and things like that, you can also get those like kind of clear plastic. Like usually the drawers themselves are clear plastic, but
Hmm.
the framework that holds the drawers are maybe white or black or something like that. But they're those usually stackable as well, kind of like drawers, like 3 or 4 drawers at a time and
Hmm.
whatnot. You put a bunch of like smaller games or maybe expansions and components and stuff like that into those things, and then because trying to stack a bunch of small games sometimes on those big shelves is difficult because they'll slide on you or whatever the deal is. So having a combination of both is not a bad idea, I think, as well.
Hmm. I agree.
Yeah. Um, Also check Pinterest. There's lots and lots of people on Pinterest who are like, "Oh, hey, just type in
That's the
board
other
game
rule.
storage."
Yeah. The other rule is you have to take pictures of how you store your games once you
Exactly.
store them.
That's a good point. That's true. That's true. So yeah, there's that too. What about all of the parts and tokens that are inside of the box? Like I
Yeah.
was just talking about punching out all those cardboard pieces. Now, the Ogre 6th edition game actually has little dividers and stuff like that in the box, all these little vacuum formed little
Hmm.
dividers for all the different parts, which is part of what made me want to go, okay, well, I'm going to punch these out because then I can fill in those little, compartments. If
Right.
those compartments weren't in there, I'm like, well, I'm not going to punch all these out and just let them roll around inside the box
Hmm.
like a madman. So, but there's a lot of games out there that don't have little compartments and little things and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're getting better,
Um,
like even coming with like little baggies and stuff like that.
yeah, generally, yeah, that's true.
But yeah, not all of them, and even ones that sometimes do, they're not always arranged the right way. Like they might have like a giant tray that you put,
Hmm
40 different types of cards all in, and then you've got to sort them every time. Um, so yeah, like some of the companies out there, like I know there's like 3 or 4 big companies out there to do it, but yeah, even like 3D printed ones, because sometimes not
hmm
only just help keeping stuff from getting damaged, but also help you clean up and start be a lot faster.
Yeah, no, that's true. There's a lot of 3D printed inserts. So if you've got a 3D printer, like an FDM printer, there's a lot of people that can use those, and they work out nice. Otherwise, you've got like I look on Etsy. Like Etsy's got lots of people who are 3D printing cool little dividers for different games. It's generally a good idea to like type in the name of the game, like Wingspan board game organizer or something like that, and you'll probably be more likely to find stuff like that on Etsy and whatnot.
Yep.
Um, so yeah. And then beyond, so you've got them organized, you got them on shelves inside the boxes, you got all your little parts put together in the right ways and all that kind of stuff. But what happens if you like are a person who likes to loan out their games and then now you don't know who you loan them to?
That's the worst. Yeah,
It is the worst.
it can be as simple as just a notebook, or
Hmm
bring up a notepad app, on your phone.
Phone or something, sure.
Yeah, or you could try like a mobile app that somebody maybe has made from
It's
GameFor.
true. But it's very true. Yes, the GameFor library tracker
Sure.
allows you to track your game library and figure out. Like we originally designed it for use at conventions for like game board game libraries at conventions. But
Right.
it will also work if you are a person who loans out your stuff because at least now you know who has what. Whereas and it's all in one place, which is also nice too. But yeah, you should definitely track. Like, I'm not saying you necessarily have to like start a spreadsheet and be like, this is all the games I have and this is when I got them. I mean, if you want to do that,
You
knock
could,
yourself out.
yeah. I
Like,
mean, how
yeah,
long it takes
absolutely.
to play, and then, how many people, and
Oh, sure. And we've even talked about in the past putting like a 3x5 card in the board game itself and then writing down when you play it so that at some point
mm,
you could pull that game out, open it up, and go, geez, I haven't played this in 5 years. Maybe I should think about selling it, if
right,
I'm into that kind of thing or whatever. So there's that too. You can do, I'm not going to tell you right now to not make a spreadsheet. If you like doing that stuff and that's how you like to spend your time, knock yourself out. Absolutely. But if you're just like, I just don't want to lose games that I have
right,
loaned to people and then forgotten, you may want to look at the GameFor library tracker
right.
available
Again,
on
you don't want
iOS and Android.
right. You don't want to make work to have the fun. It's just like
Exactly.
the shelving. Like, yeah, you could, if you are into woodworking, like doing woodworking, you can make your own shelves and
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
inserts. But if you don't like doing that stuff, then we're not going to tell you go do more stuff that you don't like to do more stuff.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
But generally, like trying to have the stuff all in one spot is not a bad idea. Just
Oh
because,
yeah.
like you said, it's out of sight, out of mind kind of situation. So,
Organization is super helpful.
mhm.
And even like our next topic, like role playing games, organization, like I remember, I still to this day remember that. So Milwaukee Tools has like a pull cart thing that has like stackable crates and with different
Okay.
sizes and stuff. But it's like it's looks almost like luggage, but they're all crated, and the DM had bought those and like had like the other, tall one that had all of his books in it, another tall one that had pre-gen characters sorted by like the class,
Like, yep.
and then he had a bunch of short ones that had all of his miniatures and stuff, and they had some dice and loaner dice that he was okay with other people using, and
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so he like was like just like wheeled it up to at our convention table with everything ready to go, and it's like, oh, well, that is super organized and looks like it would be easy to find stuff, but
Some people are just super organized, but the benefit is that others of us who are not as organized can learn from them and then
mhm.
go, oh, I could just go buy that thing and then put it together, and then that would versus coming up with that whole kind of concept yourself.
Exactly,
That's
yes,
the organizational mind can see that and go, I could use that for role playing. Whereas it's designed for moving Milwaukee tools around inside of a factory, most likely.
right,
I'm
or
assuming,
yeah,
you know what I
yeah,
mean?
keeping your screws and nails and all the stuff sorted on, yep, but
Yeah,
yep,
exactly. So yeah,
absolutely,
that's very cool. But with role playing games, like you said, kind of our next section here, there's also a lot. I mean, we were talking about live play role playing game podcasts and YouTube channels and stuff like that before. More and more people are getting into role playing games, but there's though you generally have less physical stuff than you do in board gaming, there's still a lot of stuff you have to kind of keep track of.
yeah, like notes,
Yeah,
especially if you're like a GM, you've got, your
yeah,
campaign stuff. You've got to track all the stuff of what's supposed to happen, all the stuff that did happen, your ideas for stuff that you're going to make happen. Yeah, it can get pretty overwhelming, pretty
right,
quickly.
yeah. And if you're creating, if you like, well, I got to come up with like the world that these people are going to play in and all that kind of stuff, that's also a ton of work. And there are people out there who love doing that because they love the creative aspect of it. And there's other people that are just like, I just kind of want to, like just have something that's ready to go, pre-generated or whatever. And then
Right.
there's also, I mean, honestly, there's also the big issue is the trying to like just get everybody together in some situations.
Yeah.
Like when you're playing like a board game, it's kind of like it can be kind of spontaneous to some degree. And you do it, you play a game and you're done and that's it. But like with role playing games, it's generally a campaign. It's a thing you need to do repeatedly, and
With
that
the
kind of
same
stuff.
people and stuff.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So for getting together and and playing and stuff like that, I don't know if there's any necessarily like there's not really anything out there that I've seen so far that's like an actual like let's all figure out the date, that we can play next and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure that there's different shared calendars you can use through Google Calendar and things like that if you want to or whatever.
Right.
But sometimes it's just easier to not actually get together, but just to everybody, like if you've got people who live farther away and there's travel time and all that jazz. And of course, during the pandemic, we weren't supposed to get together really anyway and all that. And so there are plenty of companies out there that are making it so that you can play your role playing games against each other or with each other, however you do that, without actually having to be together.
Hmm. Yeah, that definitely cuts it down. If if I'm, when I had smaller kids and maybe there wasn't stuff going on, but I, had to stay home because the kids are here.
Hmm.
But hey, they go to bed at 8 o'clock, so if we can game at 8:30, and I don't have to travel, I have
Hmm.
a lot more open nights. So
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So Roll20, I know, is one that you've used pretty well.
yeah, yeah, I like Roll20. Um, there's free and versions as well, and
Hmm.
so yeah, I Roll20 I've found works the best for me and my groups. I like D&D Beyond's got more and more stuff lately added to it. And then sometimes just using a Discord server, if
Right.
you are just, some games are not very role heavy or very RPG heavy, and you just basically need a server to talk on. Google Meet and Discord work, completely fine.
Exactly. Roll20 gives you the benefits of everybody being able to see the map and move things around and all kinds of stuff like that. And so there's tons of features to it, but there's some costs too if you want a lot of those extra features, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. As you
Yeah,
start getting used to more features, yeah, then you can. There's some stuff where you can subscribe, and some stuff where you start purchasing, and yeah,
exactly. And then you mentioned D&D Beyond. D&D Beyond's benefit, I think, is more for like if you're gonna sit down and play a role playing game and it's been maybe a month since the last time you guys got to play, like where did I put my character sheets? Like as a player, you know what I mean? Or like that's or even if like you're the GM and you would like to check somebody's player sheets, but you know that they took the player sheets home with them and they didn't keep them at your house or whatever, or you're playing online, like D&D Beyond is really helpful in that it allows you to be able to track all of your stuff easier and you're not like it's on the cloud, right? I mean, that's basically
right,
the case. So the benefit there is that you don't have to worry about like losing your folder that's got like, Metallica written on the front of it or whatever and all that stuff. And then you're with your character sheets and all that kind of jazz.
right.
Like it's tracking all that kind of stuff. Plus, I believe your GM can look at the stuff as well. So like even in between sessions, they could be like, how many hit points has he
Yeah,
got again? I
depending on
forget
what
how
it
many.
is.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just can get kind of crazy because if like you start using different manuals and stuff like that, access to that can get expensive, especially if you're buying the physical books as well. And
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's
but
the thing about, yeah. I mean, if you use D&D Beyond kind of as at the base level, it's free, I believe, right?
right.
Or pretty close to free. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is designed to get you to be buying the books digitally through them kind of and stuff like that. That's where they're making their money mostly.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
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 There's
Yeah.
definitely the like, hey, why don't you do it this way? So,
Hmm. Hmm. And then like trying to like we were talking before about like, oh, I need stuff, I need things to talk about and I don't have the time to generate all this lore and all that kind of jazz
balancing, yeah,
as the
encounters and
GM.
stuff. Yeah,
Exactly. And there's tons and tons and tons of stuff out there that's pre-generated and ready to go from Wizards. If let's say you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? There's obviously tons of books that they put out with different campaign
hmm,
systems and worlds and all that stuff. But there's also plenty of things you're like you go on to like drive through RPG or whatever, and you're just like, I need to find, you know, a bunch of lists of kobolds that I don't have to generate, or a bunch of lists of, like cool magical weapons that I don't have to
yeah,
generate, and stuff like that. You know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. There's books that are just random number generated or stuff for different things, like a tavern. I need a tavern. Well. Yeah, but I don't have imagination, so with some dice and this one book, I can generate the entire thing. Like,
Well, maybe you have imagination, you just don't have time. That's
sorry,
also a
yes,
benefit.
yes,
Yeah, 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 yeah. But yeah, no, that there's lots of different things out there available for you, and not just from the big company, and not just from the company that makes the product that you make. You know what I
hmm
mean? Like, obviously, if you're playing a sci-fi game and then you like grab some like random kind of tavern thing, it's going to take a little bit of work to convert it to be a sci-fi tavern or whatever. Especially if it's filled with wizards or I don't but there's stuff generally out there, and obviously the more stuff that you play of the bigger games, you've got more stuff available, more content available for the bigger games. But
absolutely.
there's plenty of those things that can be modified and changed, and
hmm
very frequently even the slightly smaller games have got resources themselves, or lists of people who have resources, or they've got their own kind of almost like drive through RPG type thing where they're just like, oh, this is all of the stuff that's people are selling that's related to our game, or
Yeah, or just
whatever. And
free. Yeah, that they put together. Yep.
yeah, yeah. Now, what about conventions? I've never played an RPG at a convention, but I know you have.
Yeah, and sometimes just being able to kind of just like I'm gonna go sit down and let someone else do all the hard stuff, and I just get to play the game.
Hmm.
That's sometimes that can get over that hump, or kind of give you the reprieve from feeling like you've been doing a lot of work to prep and stuff like that. You just you get to kind of just sit down, and they've taken care of getting other people to come play and all that fun stuff. And so you can just focus on the fun parts of the game.
Yeah, yeah. I've never. Well, I don't play a lot of RPGs these days, but I've always thought personally for myself that playing at a convention with like randos that I don't know, it's always been kind of a thing where I'm like, I don't know. I mean, like personally, but if you're cool with that, then the benefit is that yeah, you get to try out new games, you get to experience different type of players than the normal players that you play with in your group or whatever.
Right.
And if you're a GM, you also get the benefit as a GM of being able to try out a game that you haven't tried out and not have to run either. You don't have to start by,
hmm
climbing that hill. I'll be like, all right, well, the group wants to start playing Vampire. We've never played Vampire before, and I got to be the GM. So I'm going to, you can sit down and play maybe Vampire at like a bigger convention or something like that,
Yeah.
and like kind of learn more about the game.
Right. Or even there's even some services that are starting up now for where you can hire a GM to run your game for your group.
Yeah. 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 That's becoming more and more of a thing as well. I mean, it kind of depends on the locality and stuff like that, unless
Right.
it's online. If you're playing,
Right.
like something like Roll 20, there's plenty of GMs who are just basically running stuff on Roll 20 for people, and that
hmm
location's not an issue. I mean, time zones maybe potentially is an issue, but that's basically about it.
hmm
Um, Collectible card games. Neither of us really plays a lot of collectible card games these days.
Right. In fact, yeah, we were just talking about Keyforge being bought.
Yeah,
Like
like
for
the one game that we've played in the
yeah,
past X amount of years, they got bought by. They're no longer owned by Fantasy Flight / Asmodee. They just got bought by a new company called Ghost Galaxy.
yeah, yep,
Yeah,
yep,
yeah, yeah. So that's interesting. And Keyforge is interesting in that your deck always stays together. There's no like, oh, I take this card and I put it in a different deck. Like the
right.
decks are designed to go together. Most other games are designed where your cards are super interchangeable and you can
You,
move things around and stuff
right.
like
And you
that.
got to build your deck, so you've got
Mhm.
there's some kind of sorting probably going on, so you know what you have and what you can bring in, and
And just trying to figure out what you have, what you don't have. Like if you're trying to build something,
hmm
like especially when you start getting a really huge collection, you may have the cards that you think you need, but you don't know where they are, and you end up having to go buy them. And then as soon as you buy them, you come home and there's the cards that you were looking for. Right?
right.
That's just the way it works. That's the way it works for me, not necessarily for card games, but for all kinds of things. Like I
hmm
am completely out of Windex, and then you go to the store, you buy Windex, and come home and oh, there's the Windex. So
Yeah, I did that at even at our office. I was like, "Oh shoot, we're probably getting low on paper towels. I need to go order paper towels."
oh
And I
yeah,
and I
and
did that
then
like twice, and I think we ended up with like 40 or 50 rolls of toilet or paper towels.
we're good on paper towels for a really long time.
Actually, we're not. I think we're
Are
down
you?
to our last two.
That does. Are you sure?
I
Have you
don't
looked?
that
Have you looked everywhere?
I haven't, and that's why I haven't ordered. But I've
Right. Yeah.
started, going,
Didn't we donate some paper towels to something
Oh
at a
yeah,
Christmas
that's right.
time?
We did. It was like
It was
yeah,
like
that's
2019, wasn't it? There was some sort of
yes.
Christmas thing, and we donated a bunch because we're like, well, we got a lot of extra paper towels, but yeah,
Yeah, they were looking for donations to give for like the local
like a shelter or something.
shelter and
Yeah,
stuff, and we're like,
yeah, yeah,
yes, yes, please.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But still, we should definitely check to see if we get extra paper
Oh
towels.
yeah, that's why I have yeah. But yep.
But
So
but nonetheless, not. This isn't about paper
the
towels.
paper
Although
towel podcast.
exactly, yeah. Um, so there is tons of tracking software solutions out there for tracking your card game collection. You know what I mean? Like if you're getting into, let's say you're playing Pokemon, let's say you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh, let's say you're playing Magic, any one of those games. When I started doing some research and I'm like, oh, I wonder which one, and then it turns out that there's like, yeah, a lot of people have thought of this. This is not like, oh yeah, this one company makes them and that's what it is. There's tons and tons and tons and tons of different stuff out there. I found a Life Hacker um, article about how to track your collectible card game
Mhm.
collection, and it was filled with different solutions. So there are plenty of solutions out there for you if you've been doing it for a while and you feel like kind of overwhelmed. Now generally, like, there back in the day people would be like, oh, I've got to start a spreadsheet and blah blah blah, and that's a giant pain. It's from what I can tell now, there are plenty of different applications that allow you to literally just use your phone and like, I got a card, boop, and then it's like, okay, we know what card that is, and then you don't have to
Yeah,
sit there and type it in or find it or anything like that. Like there's a lot of different things like that. I believe TCG Player has an app like that, so you can use that to track your deck and stuff. And then I'm sure that also helps them with data as well, as far as like how many cards are out there and this and that, and all
yeah.
that kind of helps their pricing.
There's sorting and selling. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So there's plenty of different solutions out there for you to be able to track your stuff and like tracking your board game collection. Like as a person who's never had tons of board games, I was always like, nah, I don't know why I would do that. Tracking miniatures, I'm like, I have too many miniatures in my opinion to track, so I don't know if I'm going to do that. But there's
Hmm.
a definite benefit, especially when you are list building, to be able to like track, because especially if like with card games, like if you're like, I need a creature that does 4/4 and is only 2 mana, and then being able to search by those card,
Yeah,
the spoil,
there's right.
you
There's
basically
more
would look
sortable stuff.
online.
Yeah.
Right. You'd look online and go, what's that card that I'm looking for? And then TCG is like, it's this card. And then you're like, do I have that card in my collection? And then you go to your thing and you look and you're like, I do. Oh, great. So, that's helpful.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's lots of that kind of stuff. And then as far as actual storage, I mean, generally all games these days, I think if you're playing like a tournament game, if you're playing anything that's even vaguely competitive, like I think you're supposed to always have them sleeved, right?
Yeah, you have to so that there's no way to like mark or know what the next card coming up is.
Mm-hmm.
So which is funny because like I think when like originally like was originally playing Magic and stuff, it was like you can't sleeve that. So that's like we've got to see that they're actual cards and stuff. Like
Right.
it kind of like
Yeah. Yeah.
flopped to the other way of like no, yeah, it totally has to be unmarked, and no see through back and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a big thing as far as storage, and then because of that, you're also looking for uh, sports cards have been around obviously longer than collectible card games, and there are plenty of solutions out there. If you don't even have like a game store in your local area, but you've been getting, let's say, lots and lots of Magic cards from, I don't know, Target or Walmart or other
Hmm.
places they sell them, or you've been ordering them online. See if there's any collectible sports cards companies or stores around, because they also sell these like white kind of corrugated cardboard boxes that come in different widths. They're designed to hold cards, but sometimes it's like just one column of cards, but maybe it's like there's 3 columns of cards or 5 columns of cards. Like they've got all these different kind of cardboard boxes. But if it's a game store that sells Magic, they probably also sell those corrugated boxes, and that's really nice for being able to, at the very least, store them so they're not just like flopping around in your bedroom.
Hmm.
um, but also it is really nice for helping to be able to like organize. So you can say, I'm going to put all my rare cards in this, or maybe you're going to organize them by color, or like all kinds of different options.
Hmm.
But being able to do that for the stuff that's not in your current deck or decks that you're playing with is a smart plan. And if you've been doing this for a while, you've probably are like, yeah, obviously you put them in those white
Yeah.
lug boxes and stuff. But still, there are folks out there maybe just getting into it, or they're like, well, if I was to get into Magic, what do I do with all the cards that I'm
Hmm.
not using? It's kind of important. And it helps to protect them as well.
Right.
Um, Another way is to just not buy cards. And that sounds snarky, but
It
it's
did.
not. Yeah, no, no, no. I mean, but what I mean is that there's the video games, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I see
yeah,
where you're
yeah.
going with that. Yep.
Right. So like, Magic right now, Magic Arena got real popular once the pandemic rolled around and you couldn't go to Friday Night Magic anymore.
Hmm.
And that is I don't know if there's a mobile version of it. I know there's a PC game. And probably
Yeah.
maybe Xbox and PlayStation. I don't know that for sure, but I know that for sure there's a PC version, and it's called Magic the Gathering Arena, and it is just regular old straight up Magic, but it is played online. And they've had Magic Online for a long time, but the old Magic
Hmm.
Online was a little squirrely, and this new Magic Arena is popular, but it's very, I mean, it's the same game, but it's different because you don't have the cards, and I don't know that you can sell them in the game. You can't like, oh, I got this really super cool card, and I'm going to sell it on Magic Arena.
Hmm.
Maybe you can. I don't know, to be honest with you. I've watched people play it on Twitch, but I've never actually, like, I've not played it myself.
Yeah, I haven't dove into exactly how you go about obtaining cards and that kind of thing.
Yeah. I would tell you though, if you're interested in getting into Magic, and that might not be a bad way to start at the very least. And
Hmm.
then if you decide I really want to get into the actual tabletop version, then you're not sitting on a bunch of cards that you bought when you didn't know what you needed or whatever, and you're trying to figure out how to organize them and all that kind of stuff. Um, I think there's also a big benefit to some degree as well, as far as the work of learning the rules. There's a lot of rules specifically in Magic. Some games may
Right.
be easier and
Especially
whatnot,
with
but
how many
Magic's got a
cards.
lot of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly. And when you play the arena version, at least to me, it seems like it's helping you quite a bit, because it doesn't ever go, oh, yeah, sure, you can play that if you can't. You know what I mean? Like, it's like,
Hmm.
no, dog, you can't play that. So just don't do that.
Yeah, that gives you just
And
some rails that just.
yeah, exactly. So that's helpful. Um, and then there's wargaming,
Yeah.
miniature wargaming, which to some people I think is probably the tabletop game style with the most work involved.
Yeah, I would
Would you
say
say
that's
that that's going
fair.
to be the case?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely fair. Yep.
So I think personally it has something to do with the fact that, like, I look at, I think there's people out there who are like, okay, I bought this game, I came home, now I have to go through all the work of building it and painting it before I can actually start enjoying it and playing it.
Hmm.
And that's valid enough, sure.
And even before that,
I
sometimes you have to be like, I have to like read the rules, understand the rules, then I've got to come up with a list so that I
Sure.
know
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
then I know what to buy before I
That's
take it
very
home
true
and
as
even
well.
assemble. So
Yeah, you buy a board game, you buy the board game, and it's in there. Maybe you buy some expansions or whatever, but there's never like, did I buy the right parts? Like they're all in the box. That's the
right.
idea. I get it. But for people like me, I like, the fun starts when I open the box and I get to now start building and then painting and then all that kind of stuff, and list building or whatever. Like, that's like the fun doesn't just start when the playing starts. The fun starts during the hobby portions of it as well. And not everyone agrees with that. And
Hmm.
maybe they look at it different ways, and that's fine. We have
Yeah.
different opinions. We can be reasonable people on the internet. But there are ways to make some of those things that maybe you look at as being more work a little bit less difficult. So have you used the Monument mold line scraper?
I believe I did buy that the last time I made a monument purchase. I've been
Mhm,
using the Citadel one for a while, but on your
mhm.
recommendation, I believe I got the new monument one
The
as well.
Monument one?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I'm
'cause
still like back and forth between it because I think it's just it's a different technique on how you use each one. But
oh, yeah,
yeah.
it's definitely a personal preference thing, but, because like mold line scraping, a lot of people see that in the building process is like, well, I like building, but I don't like the scraping the mold lines. And
Mhm.
then they're unhappy with their paint jobs later on because they got mold lines and stuff. So finding like if you're like, God, I can't do it with this X-Acto blade. There's other stuff out there. Like you mentioned the Citadel one, I mentioned the one from Monument,
Yeah.
But they will definitely help you. Most people will use like an X-Acto blade, the edge of it, or maybe the back
Yeah,
of
I
it.
could.
But
I won't go to that anymore. Yeah,
yeah,
that's.
yeah, yeah. But there's definitely things that can help you with building, like scraping the mold lines there, and having something that's a better solution is way nicer.
Hmm.
I'm a big fan of using CA glue, like super glue.
Hmm.
And the reason I like to use super glue is because it has a tendency to grip faster. And also it's I find if I screwed something up, it's real easy to take apart again. Like it doesn't just fall apart too much. Usually I don't find CA glue just
Yeah,
falls apart,
definitely does that.
but it does definitely make it easier for me to be able to like, oh, I glued this wrong. I gotta pop it apart, or whether you use like a debonder, uh, plastic cement like is making basically like a plastic
Well,
weld. Once it's glued, it's glued. You're gonna have to cut it apart,
right.
and I think there are a lot of people out there who were like, I'm supposed to use plastic cement when putting together plastic models. And then they're like, but if I screw it up, I got to buy a new model or something like that. And there's ways around that. Another big trick is that if you need to take a model apart and you've glued it together with super glue, put it in the freezer for a day or two, because
Mm,
it'll brittle up the glue quite a bit, and then you can just start popping limbs off and it works. But you
yeah.
have to probably take the model apart and then kind of put it back together
Right.
again,
Yeah, and
because you'll weaken all of the glue.
yeah, and there's different levels of CA glue for quickness, so that you can kind of decide like which time, which one works best for how you're assembling. If
Oh yeah, yeah. There's like quick set stuff, and there's also even like activator that you can get to spray on it or
Oh,
drip on it or
activator,
whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
activator was changed my life. That, and then also using baking soda
Hmm, hmm.
to as a quick activator. It also gave some strength to pieces if I broke something.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, definitely. So there's definitely like it takes some time, the building parts, but it's still something that you can do and make it work. And then maybe you're interested in just like pre-assembled games. If the building parts, the part you hate, there's pre-assembled games out there like a Song of Ice and Fire, which is from Coolmanir Not.
Hmm.
That is a game based off of like the books that the Game of Thrones TV show is based off of, and those models are pre-built.
Yeah, or like 3D printing. Now that
Yeah,
as you
good
get to
point.
resin and stuff like that, you can just have the whole model basically ready to go, and you just have to clean up some possible supports. But and even
Yeah,
then, not always.
no mold lines either.
Right.
There's been plenty of times I've been looking for mold lines on a 3D printed model, and I'm like, oh, that's right, there wouldn't be any mold lines
Right.
anywhere. That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. So yeah, that's something to look at as well. Other games like God Tier from Steamforge Games, like that's again a pre-built game or pre-built models and stuff like that, and then
Hmm.
you just paint them if you want to. But I think it's a good idea to paint them. I think it looks cooler, but having them pre-built means you don't have to mess around as much. Probably still have to scrape some mold lines, but that's about it.
Hmm.
With painting, there's a lot of techniques and technologies now that make painting easier, in my opinion.
Hmm.
I think one of the best ones, especially if you're kind of new to painting, is to do some sort of zenithal highlight prime,
Hmm.
which you can do. So zenithal means that you've primed the model dark, like black usually, but sometimes it's some other base color, and then you are adding a lighter color from above to simulate the light coming from the sky, let's say. So sometimes it's black with white over the top. Sometimes it's black with gray over the top. Sometimes it's dark brown with red over the top. If you're making a space marine and he's going to be wearing red armor, then that way you don't have to bother. But if you're like, this model is going to be a lot of different colors, I don't even know what colors he's going to be yet or whatever, then do that black and white one. And you don't have to use an airbrush. You can use a rattle can. You can use even a big, like makeup brush for dry brushing and stuff like
Hmm.
that. And then you paint over it with transparent colors, and then that black and white value comes through the transparent blue, transparent green, transparent red, or whatever you put over it, and then it looks like it's not just flat red, it is light red that kind of goes down to dark red underneath the armpit, and that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Do a YouTube search for slap chop painting. There's a guy in England who's named Rob, the Honest Wargamer, and he didn't come up with this, to be perfectly frank, but he made a video and it's gotten popular, and it's what he refers to as slap chop painting, where you're basically like priming everything black, dry brushing it all white, and then using transparent colors like contrast colors from Citadel, speed paint colors from Army Painter,
Hmm.
washes, glazes, stuff like that over the top of it. Yeah, you want the blade to be silver on his sword. Well, then you're going to use an opaque paint, and it's going to cover up the black and white zenithal on the sword, but the sword should be silver, so that makes sense. You're going to do a couple little opaques here and there, but it really speeds things up and can make the models look a lot nicer than you trying to like use all opaque paints and highlight the raised parts and shade the dark parts manually. This is a little bit more simple, so you can get your painting stuff done. And there's tons and tons of tutorials on YouTube. That's the best place to take a look for that kind of stuff, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Yeah. You've done that kind of stuff. You
Oh
like to
yeah.
use contrast
Yep.
paints. Yeah. And I do it all the time. Like that's the main way that I paint generally, is to do a black and white or some other kind of, color combination zenithal, and then put those kind of transparent colors over the top.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
How do you store your miniatures?
I take that back. I was gonna say I don't, but I use the IKEA tall glass shelf thingy.
The Deltoff, I think, is what it's called.
Yes, I've got
Or
actually
Detloff, something
two of
like
them
that.
now. I've got two of those. And then otherwise, like to carry them back and forth, I use my uh uh battle foam
Mm-hmm.
case.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, between those, that's pretty much how I store mine.
Yeah, I mean that's also seen as, especially once you've been in it for a while, all of a sudden you're like, I have all these miniatures. Where am I going to put them?
Hmm.
And a display case is really cool, especially for stuff that you're really super proud of. And those, if you can get those Deltoff or Detloff or however it's pronounced, if you can get those cases from IKEA right now, I would tell you to get them. But right now, I know IKEA, like everything else in the world, has got supply chain issues. But those things were really nice, and like, remember, they were
Yeah.
like $65. They're like
Yeah,
super kind of cheap for like a 5 foot tall case with
and they're
glass and stuff like
yeah,
that.
and they're heavy. Yeah.
Yeah. No, exactly. When they're still when they're unbuilt and they're in that box, you pick that box up, it is surprisingly heavy because it's glass.
Hmm.
Um, but if you're not looking for even just a display case, or you got a display case, but you've also got a bunch of troops that you don't want to display or whatever, you just want to keep them someplace so they don't get all dusty and stuff. Those, I wouldn't put miniatures on a open shelf just to leave them there, because they
No
will get
dust,
dusty.
and yeah, then you've got all
Yeah,
kinds of
spider webs.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
You don't want to be walking into spider webs, like Gwen Stefani said.
exactly.
Um,
That's exactly. She was very smart. Plastic tubs, like those big kind of Rubbermaid tubs,
hmm.
and maybe you've got like extra little cardboard boxes inside that are holding different things. If you really want to get fancy, you can start magnetizing your models.
Hmm.
So you can put magnets on the underside of the bases, and then
Yeah,
you can attach them to like little sheet metal plates on the inside of things or whatever, so they're not touching each other or anything else.
right. Pluck foam
That's
works well.
Yep. If you're cool with foam, there's like pluck foam and like other kinds of laser cut foam and stuff like that. You mentioned battle foam. Battle foam makes, what banker boxes are?
Yes.
Like those cardboard boxes
Right,
you
right,
buy to
right,
keep
right.
files and stuff. They make like banker boxes that are sized to their foam, like their biggest size foam. So you just and they say battle foam on them and all that stuff, and you buy them, and then you can just like if you're not going to the store, you're just like, I need to put this someplace. You can take those foam trays with all
Hmm.
your cool army stuff in it and just put them in these cardboard boxes, which are considerably cheaper than their cases, and then set them someplace. And then when you want to go to the store, you go dig through the cardboard boxes, you find the trays you want, then you put them into a case, you take them to the place. It's a smart plan.
Yeah.
But definitely with your miniatures, it's not a good idea just leave them out on regular shelves, because then they do get real dusty and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Even terrain, frankly, but I do have a tendency to keep my terrain out on regular shelves because it's real hard to keep otherwise. But then I find it slightly easier to dust off terrain than miniatures. I think, I don't know why. I think there's less
Yeah.
spindly bits and less things I can possibly break off by like
And they're a little
taking a
bit
brush to it.
sturdier, so you can always like
Yeah,
compress air them or something too if you really
yeah,
need
that's a
to.
good point too. That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. And then list building, like, building your list for your game. You've got this game you want to play, and you've got your army list or your codex or your battle tome or whatever different thing kind of book that explains your faction. And usually you have a point limit, like, okay, we're building 1,000 point list, we're
Hmm.
building a 250 point list, building a 20 point list. It depends on the game you're playing. And then you've got to kind of start doing math, and that can be a bummer. And the thing is, what's interesting to me is that like the biggest companies, like specifically like Games Workshop, They've got some kind of army builders that you can do online, but they're not great.
Hmm.
Honestly, they're like meh. Um, Lots of companies out there outside of Games Workshop do have nice army builders online. Infinity, from Corvus Belli, like that, their army builder is probably one of the best in the industry, in my opinion, and they've been around forever. They've had that online army builder for years and years and years. This is not a new thing. Um, you and I were just looking at the one page rules army builder, like web based army builder thing recently.
Hmm.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's other software out there, like probably one of the most well known ones is one called Battlescribe. That's the one I have a tendency to use, and it's got tons and tons and tons of different types of games that are available. It doesn't just do like say 40K or Age of Sigmar. Like even the game that Vince and I made, Rain in Hell, that's available as a data set for Battlescribe. Someone outside, not us, basically kind of wrote up the thing and made it so that you can build your cabals there in Battlescribe.
Hmm.
Battlescribe still works, but no one's heard from the actual programmer for a really long time. So luckily, the data sets are not handled by the programmer; they're handled by outside forces. But yeah, it's kind of weird. And by like a long time, we mean like what was last time we talked about this? It was like 18 months since anybody had contact with this
Yeah,
person.
and that was several months ago. So yeah, it's got to be
Right,
up
exactly.
around
Yeah.
2 years at this point. So
Yeah. So, but it's still, you can get it from the app stores and whatnot and download it and put it on your phone or whatever. And then just sit there and list build and build to your army, to your heart's delight without having to sit down and get a piece of paper, like a caveman and a pencil. I mean, oh my God. And do all of that kind of stuff. So tabletop gaming is inherently maybe not as, I don't want to say low impact. Like if you're going to play a video game, you sit down, you play a video game and you're done. Like you don't, there's not as much.
you
There are
don't have
certain
to
video
assemble
games.
the CD-ROM.
There's that too. You don't usually have to write your own code and all that kind of stuff. Also true. I mean, there are certainly video games. I've watched people play video games before where most of the game seems to be about them organizing their inventory, like that's
Yeah.
fine if you're into that kind of thing. And that's fine. But for the most part, I think that they are a little bit, they seem like a bit less work than tabletop games
Hmm.
can sometimes, but there's actually a lot of great ways in tabletop gaming for you to be able to get around some of that stuff and be able to crank out some solutions that make the game a lot more fun for you and make it maybe less frustrating in some situations.
Hmm.
Like where did my dice go? Oh, I've got a dice bag. That's right, that's where they are. That kind of thing. So that's kind of helpful. Thanks again for listening to this episode of the GameFor Podcast. If you've got questions or comments and you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment below. If you're listening via your favorite podcast player or just into the whole YouTube comment section thing, then you can feel free to reach out to us via email at podcast@iamgamefor.com. You can also keep up to date with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And check out our website at www.iamgamefor.com. That is www.iamgamefor.com. Thanks.
Thanks.